And so, welcome to the second half of the report parameters tutorial. In this second half, we're going to look at a little more complicated list of parameters and one that has a few more and a few that we'll discuss that we did not discuss in the first half of the tutorial in the expected assessments report. So let's in this time we're going to create an RCI report, and we're going to take a look. And again, the particular type of report here doesn't really matter all that much. It's just sort of an example report to be able to show more parameters. Now, if you'll recall, the expected assessments report had a reasonably short list of parameters, and so we can see there are several more parameters defined for the RCI report, and that we may have to pick in order to get the report looking the way we want. So again, for all reports, the name is just something that's descriptive to you that will help you know exactly what it is, and we're going to call this example reliable change, but possibly you could call it RCI for previous year all providers, for example, might be the name that you might want to give to your RCI report. And let's just stick with example RCI for our purposes, and description again is something that is meaningful to you. The description defaults to just the report type description for client improvement BioUs for tutorial demonstration. And there we go. Now, there should be some familiar parameters that we see here that we saw in the last tutorial on the expected assessments report, and that's the date range parameters. And again, these are exactly the same parameters, and you would interact with these, and they mean largely the same thing in relation to the RCI report that they do in the expected assessments report. It may have slightly different implications, but essentially this is again the way that we pass some kind of date range into the report, and then the report may interpret that date range a little differently, but that's more related to the specifics of the report, which we are not going to necessarily talk about here. Again, we're just interested in kind of demonstrating interacting with parameters in general, and just understanding that we have to set them somehow and that they will have some meaning to the particular report type when we run it. So we're not going to cover the date range again any more than just to pick an example here, and in this case for this RCI I'm just going to pick the last year. And so we'll close these up, and we are done with those. The first parameter specific here to the RCI that we're going to look at is the client status, and this is just a drop-down red indicating that we need to pick something, and we have a drop-down of whether we want to pick active, inactive, or both active and inactive. In this case we want to see both of those. If we come down to instruments again, we've seen instruments previously. We saw it in the example in the expected assessments report, and this parameter is the same, although in the context of this report it will have slightly different meaning, and even within the parameters list. And so what does that mean? What it means is there are parameters below here, in this case the assessment domains, the from assessment type, and the to assessment type, that will have different values depending on what value we choose here for the instrument. So if I pick one value for the instrument, the values I see in my assessment domain are going to look different, and that will change immediately as I make the selection here. And this makes sense in that the assessment domains are not going to be the same from instrument to instrument. So let's just take a look at our list of instruments here, for example. And we can see we have all the instruments that are defined to the system again, and we need to pick one. And so if we were to pick the ACE instrument, for example, we can see dynamically a list of the domains from the ACE instrument appear in this list, and then we would have to pick some or any or just one, for example. In this case, we're not going to pick any. We're really not interested in ACE. We're more interested in this case, in the CANs. So if we come back to our list here and pick CANs, again, we can see that the list of domains is updated immediately after I've made my selection in the instrument. And now I have a list of all the domains from the CANs instrument to pick from. And similarly happens down here in the from assessment type and the to assessment type. And just very briefly, what these two parameters mean is, in this case, in the context of running the RCI is interested in looking for change from time 1 to time 2. And so what does that time 1 and time 2 mean? Well, in the context of this report, it means time 1 is my beginning assessment, so I want to look at, for example, from initial assessment, I could pick to, let's just say, planned discharge. And I could pick multiple here because the parameter allows that. In this case, it's a single drop down here. I would only be able to pick one, initial, for example, or, whoops, we've gotten off the page there, or update, for example. And if I pick update, of course, you can only have, and again, you can see you can only have one value here in this. But the broader point is when you choose a different instrument, the list of assessment types will probably change as well. Similarly to how we saw it change here in the assessment domains, down here you would see these change as well, because each different instrument has different assessment types and reasons for assessment, another name for it. Each instrument may not have an initial or an update. In this particular case, the CANs has the initial, update, planned discharge, and unplanned discharge as reasons that are configured to the system. And so when you pick the CANs instrument, then those values are automatically populated here in your parameter list, and you are then free to pick them as the parameters that you want to pass to your report. So if we continue, before we continue, let's just kind of close these up again to get these out of our way. Instrument will close up, and we'll actually close up the client status as well. The next couple parameters that we may want to set here, the minimum duration. These are sort of, you'll see these on a variety of reports, the RCI report, for example, the impact report, for example. Oops, I've opened the wrong one. The assessment distance is what we're interested in here. And what these two parameters are is anytime you have some kind of report that deals with a time 1 assessment and a time 2 assessment, you may want to specify, okay, well, what is the date distance, or what is the time distance between those two assessments? I may want to set that I'm only interested in an initial assessment and a discharge assessment that are at least 18 months apart. And if I were interested in that, then I can specify 18 as the minimum number of months between the assessment time 1 and the assessment time 2. I'm not going to set anything, more just as an example. The minimum duration is a similar parameter, but instead of looking at the minimum time between the assessment time 1 and time 2, it would look at the minimum amount of time between the client's placement start and when the assessment time 2 happened. So you wanted to sort of look at maybe discharge assessments, but you wanted to make sure that the client had been in program in the particular treatment, for example, for at least a year. So you'd specify 12 months for that. And again, this is another parameter that I'm not going to specify here, but just more of an example. Let's close these two up. And we have the assessment statuses. This is fairly similar to the expected assessments that we saw. In this case, we could leave this blank if we wanted to just pick any assessment with any status. But in this case, we are interested only in the submitted and approved assessments, so we'll pick those. The org unit report unit filter is slightly different from the expected assessments. It looks very similar here. in that you see the organizational unit tree. But one piece that's slightly different is up at the top. You see a radio button selection here that says organizational units and organizational unit reporting units. And this is sort of more commonly known, this long phrase here, as OU tags, for example, might be known. And what that is instead of picking particular organizational units, like I believe in our last example we picked the organizational units of Champaign County and Cook County, maybe we're not interested in individual counties or organizational units in particular, but what we are interested in is maybe we have gone through ahead of time, and our system administrator has set up ahead of time a series of tags that can be applied to organizational units. And so maybe there's a tag in the system that was applied to the CANS program tag, for example, was applied to 10 organizational units. And so rather than having to remember what are all those organizational units that are applied, that have the CANS program, the system may be set up so that each of those organizational units is just tagged with the CANS program tag, and so I don't have to remember the entire list of what those organizational units are. I can simply come here and say I want all the organizational units that are tagged with the CANS program tag. And now the RCI would go out and look for data from all 10 of those organizational units. And you can set up as many of those tags as you want, and you can pick as many as you want as part of your parameters. In many cases, it may be that you just want one. Maybe there's a specific program B, and that might apply to, for example, 3 organizational units, anybody implementing the program B treatment, for example. But in this case, we are just going to go back and pick our old example of Champaign County and Cook County. The aggregate OUs we're going to leave alone. We're not going to aggregate by OUs. The last parameter that we're going to talk about here is the reporting units tag, or a parameter that shows the reporting units tree. Reporting units more commonly known as tags, and this applies to assessments. And so what this does is if you pick a certain number of tags here, for example, we'll pick the Central Valley, DM, East Valley, for example. What this is telling the report to do then is to go and search for assessments that are tagged with these tags. In this case, let's just go take a look, or let's just say for Central Valley, we'll just pick one and make it simple. What the system is going to do is it's going to go out and find any assessment that has the Central Valley tag. If it does, it will be included, or it will be included in to be considered by the RCI report, and that, of course, in conjunction with all the other parameters we've selected here. So essentially, what the reporting units and the organizational units parameters do is say look for assessments that are in Champaign County or in Cook County and have all of the tags that we have indicated here. So again, if I pick 3 tags, for example, the assessment has to have all 3 of these tags in order to be considered for selection. So we don't want to search for any tags in this particular example, so I'm just going to uncheck all of those tags. And now we can finally save our RCI, and it's ready to be run. And so before we run, if we probably just want to go and review what we've just defined and make sure that everything we've said is probably what we want. We can see, we see that we've probably missed a parameter or 2 here in the system. Again, if you leave the assessment domains blank, it would have picked them all, but we're not interested in them all. We're only interested in the child use strengths and the acculturation, or let's change it to the life domain functioning, for example. And this should probably be initial, and everything else looks pretty much the way we want it to. So save again. And now if we pick run, we can say run immediate. And we can see the output from our report parameters. And we see, again, here is the last year we picked. And again, because we ran it today, it picks the day and goes back 1 year and gives us our date range. Here are the OUs we picked. Reasons for assessment, initial to planned discharge, unplanned discharge, assessment status. These are some of the other parameters we picked. If we look down here and we can see counts of about 9 and 3 and 0 and so forth for Champaign County. Click to the next page and we can see slightly more data in Cook County. Now if we wanted to, we're not happy with that, maybe we want to make a quick change, we come back and we say, well, not just for the last year, but let's pick a slightly wider range. And let's say instead of the last year, we're going to make it from 2014. And we always want to start from there. And we're going to say, well, we don't know exactly when we want to, what our end date range is, so we're going to leave that blank. And let's just save. And we'll say we want a runtime override for that. So again, run. The system should prompt us for the end date. And we'll pick June 1st of 2015. So now we're running for about 1.5 years. And we can see the numbers are slightly higher here for Champaign County. Similarly for Cook County, since we have now expanded our date range to include about 1.5 years worth of data. So this concludes the second half of the report parameters tutorial.